Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, Quake Match gameplay. This time around, we are playing as the forces of the Empire against the Dark Elves on the map Glacial Lake. So, for my composition here, getting definitely a little hyped for the changes coming in with the Tomb Kings. Empire's getting some major reworks, definitely some, I think, buffs to their cavalry roster. Though the Demicrysts with halberds might be losing their dominance of the cavalry field to the Neakaran Knights with halberds, so we'll definitely see how that works out. Flatlands, of course, are going to be getting a massive cost increase, and so I definitely wanted to give these guys one last kind of hoorah, one last attempt at some of these units before they get changed or reworked. And of course, some of these units are getting some pretty significant buffs, like Outriders with grenade launchers. The Greatswords are getting slight buffs. We are going to be seeing some buffs for the Flagellants, despite of the fact that they're getting cost upkeep, increased cost and upkeep and all that sort of stuff. So definitely some things are coming in as changes, and I'm definitely kind of looking forward to it. So, here, I did decide to run, for my lord, I'm running the mighty Balthazar Gelt, so the voice of God himself, really. He's not the best of melee combatants. In fact, he's a pretty terrible melee combatant, really bad armor at 50, melee attack, melee defense 34 and 43, so nothing great there. Pitiful movement strength, some decent charge bonus when he's mounted on Pegasus, but that's really about it. That said, he does have, in this situation, I did bring Searing Doom, Plague of Rust, and Transmutation of Lead, all of which are fairly cheap and effective spells at just debuffing enemies, making them a lot weaker and making them a lot less effective in combat. He does have Arcane Conduit as well as the Staff of Volans, which is an immense buff to his capacity to spam spells. Both of them, of course, augment your wins and just give you a massive boost to power recharge rate and all that sort of stuff. So this is really really a rather significant benefit for him, and really hopefully means that I'll be able to spam a lot of spells. Alongside him for my heroes, I did bring an Empire Captain to stiffen up my front line, alongside a Witch Hunter just to hopefully pressure some enemy lords as they try to dive into the back line, hit them with Accusation, damage powerful single targets, and pick off high value enemy infantry. Because one of the, of course, most of the elf units, while often having fairly good stats, will tend to lack HP per model, makes them rather susceptible to model sniping with units such as Witch Hunters. And potentially this guy could definitely do some damage to a unit like, for example, Blackguard. My front line is composed entirely of unbreakable units with Flatulence, Sigmar's Sons, and the Tattershoals making up all of it. And then there's 5 units of the here. Obviously, the Tattershoals are pretty powerful. All these units do tend to have pretty good stats as far as just raw damage output goes, but unfortunately, none of the Flagellant units have good armor-piercing values, and even the Sigmar Sons don't have great armor-piercing values. So if my opponent decides to bring Harkonneth Executioners or Blackguard of Nagron, it is likely that the Poor's Flagellants and all these units will struggle immensely against dealing with them. That said, against the cheaper low-end Dark Elf infantry like Witch Elves, even Black Ark Corsairs, and of course Bleak Swords and Dread Spears, these guys can do immense work, and if they manage to bust through your enemy's front line, because they do have pretty good mobility, they can get into the back and dive in after Dark Shards and units like that. Alongside them, I do have a bit of a shooting line, mix of Silver Bullets, as well as Sterling's Revenge. Sterling's Revenge, of course, has a psychological immunity. I did put him out here on the flank in case my opponent had a flanking force ready to go, so these guys would be able to defend themselves a little bit if needed. I do have a unit of Greatswords here anchoring them, really ready to plunge into the fray wherever needed. They're very heavily veteraned up, and these guys can definitely go toe-to-toe with the majority of Dark Elf infantry. There's only one unit here, so if my opponent does some sort of sniping against them, they're definitely going to be in trouble. We also do have the Silver Bullets, as mentioned before. They are hidden here, and the reason I put them here is because the crater is defending them from enemy flanking maneuvers, at least immediately. In the back, we do have a single unit of the Royal of Griffites, of course, causing fear, terror, all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, you can't terror out enemy Blackguard of Nagron because they do have psychological immunity, but versus everything else, they're very good. And then 2 units of Outriders with grenade launchers, and these are definitely, I think, a bit of a hidden gem in some ways in the Empire roster. They can't attack air, and but they have arcs, so they can shoot over their units. If your enemy blobs up, they do immense work. Their missile damage is huge. It's completely monstrous in my opinion. You do have 34 explosive base damage and 14 explosive armor piercing damage on a fairly low reload time. So if you just start throwing grenades into tightly packed blobs, these guys will annihilate it in very short order. Definitely no pushovers. For my opponent, he did decide to go with a very wide build. He actually outnumbers me here, which is a rarity. You'll very rarely see that from coming out of Dark Elves. With a front line composed of 5 units of Bleak Swords, backed by 2 units of Dread Spears, really kind of anchoring his line against some. If I brought some of the heavier cavalry, like Empire Knights or Reiksguard, these guys can definitely anchor the flank. And the Bleak Swords can chop through most cheaper Empire infantry, though the Flagellants should be able to trade with them very effectively. Behind that, he does have a single unit of Witch Elves just to tie down any flankers or help shred light infantry in the front, and 2 units of Black Guard and Aggron to deal with cavalry. Here in the back, he does have Dark Riders with repeated crossbows, who could definitely apply some cav pressure, but perhaps deal with heavy cav. Malekith up on a dragon, or actually just a Dreadlord. I did believe it was Malekith initially, but it's just the Dreadlord with sword and shield up in the air. Of course, he does have Noxious Breath, and he does have this cool little ability here, the Strength through Spite, which is a boost to melee attack. And then he does have another Black Dragon up in the air, so definitely a bit risky of a strategy. Of course, Empire does have a lot of snares; they can definitely do a lot of damage. So we'll see how things work out. Here I'm plunging the Flagellants straight into the fray with their massive charge bonus and the low armor on the Dark Elf infantry. The Flagellants will do some immense work here. You can see the Tatterskulls plunging into the fray, coming in from the flank, and already causing immense work. You can see these poor guys are just falling apart very quickly. One of the cool things about Flagellants also is that they do have the strength of the Pennant, in which if we scroll over, you can see it's going to be a huge boost to melee attack and physical defense. You can see the first bombardment of Searing Shards coming down and really busting up these bleak swords over here and causing some immense work. My opponent does not go does not go in after Balthazar Gelt, and I'm definitely here kind of waiting to bail out with Balthazar if needed. You can see the grenades are flying into the fray, really busting up these bleak swords and causing some immense work. So despite being hit there by a breath attack, you can see all the way up to 32 kills on one of these units of Outriders. Over here on the flank, the Sterling's Revenge are trading fire with the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. You can see I will be casting a will be a debuff going down over here. You can see the transmutation of lead, debuffing these Black Guard, allowing them, or making it a little easier for my Flagellants, Sigmarsons, and all them to shred through those units. In the backline, the Silver Bullets are being dove upon by the Dragon, but the Demigryph Knights with Halberds are there to take them down. The Royal Dwarf Griffiths will shred through the Black Dragon in quick order. You can see that going down right now. In the meantime, the Witch Hunter is over here applying some pressure, sniping away at the Dreadlord, as well as applying Accusation. Meanwhile, the grenade launchers have disengaged and will be able to grenade down these Witch Elves and hopefully just cause some immense work. You can see the grenades going in, and the Witch Elves are very, very squishy. You can see just what a terrible time they're having against grenades. Sterling's Revenge is being attacked by the Dreadlord, but they do have psychological immunity, which is huge. You can see I'm using Balthazar Gelt here. It's a fairly small map, and I'm using them to zone away the Dark Riders, chasing them off the field, and using the Staff of Valance to recover some winds of magic. In the meantime, you can see really my opponent's line is buckling. He does get some units on the Witch Hunter, but the Witch Hunter is not, well, certainly not a great melee combatant. Can potentially take on these Witch Elves and just stall them for a while my other units open fire on them. You can see Sterling's Revenge still applying some pressure, and now we are going to start turning grenade launchers into the fray. And really firing off these grenades into the Witch Elves, and you can see it's just a storm of fire coming in, and we can see the silly looking grenades, and I'm trying to get a nice little image. You can see they're like these little you can see the grenades look absolutely ridiculous, kind of look like a squash or something. They're shredding through those Witch Elves very quickly. Another Searing Tomb going down, annihilating the enemy backline here, and whittling down the Black Guard a little bit, and we're definitely applying some major pressure to my opponent here. In the meantime, Balthazar is still kind of hovering around, slowly but surely eating away at my opponent's troops, and you can see that the Silver Bullets are now focused on the Dreadlord, who is trying to assassinate my Witch Hunter. You can see grenades whittling down these bleak swords, really tearing them to shreds, even as the Sterling's Revenge is unloading on this Dreadlord and really bringing him down to size. Over here, in the meantime, you can see things are definitely going south. You can see the Black Guard and Aggron is now wavering, and my opponent's army is going to shatter very shortly. So definitely pretty decisive, I think. Despite being considered Pyrrhic victory there, I think it was a pretty decisive victory for Empire, and I think there's definitely some merit to this composition. It's definitely a bit of a gimmicky composition with the amount of Unbreakable I'm bringing. It's a lot of Flagellants, it's Tatterskulls, Sigmar's Sons, all that sort of stuff. The Greatsword did some okay work, just chopping up through the Black Guard over time. Definitely not ideal, but they did an okay job. Sterling's Revenge and Silver Bullets did some great work, zoning away enemy cavalry, as well as shooting down that enemy dragon and the Dreadlord. The grenade launchers are immensely powerful. Something I think people completely underestimate with the Outriders with grenade launchers, just how potent they can be against both heavily armored infantry as well as lightly armored infantry. Against the densely packed Witch Elves, they shredded them in seconds. But even against the Black Guard and Aggron, if I needed to, I could apply them against those units, and they would have done rather well while arcing over my troops safely. You see, the Royal Dwarf Griffiths did manage to slaughter the Black Dragon and then chase down enemy bleak swords once they were trying to recover and come back into the fray. And Balthazar Gelt's bombardment spells. There have been some significant buffs to Searing Doom and in Mortal Empires, and it's made Balthazar Gelt's damage spells, or lower end damage spells, much more useful, I think. Empire kept an okay job. The Witch Hunter, nothing too fancy. I definitely didn't get the best use out of him, and it mostly came down to my deployment, I think. Nonetheless, I do think this is a rather competitive build. From my opponent's perspective, it is my opinion. I don't really think the Dark Riders, especially if you're going this heavily into your backline with some Black Guard and whatnot, I think the Dark Riders might be a bit of an unnecessary pick. You might be better off bringing 2 units of Dark Shards with shields, because they will be able to trade fire with, say, Empire handguns very effectively, while they'll just be able to trade fire effectively with enemy shooting, have slightly more range, have more arcs, and have quite a bit more DPS if you need to shred, especially on shielded units like Flagellants or Greatswords or units like that. Which was not a bad idea. Definitely this is a bit of a gamble with the bleak swords. Kind of gambling that I'm going to bring a lightly armored front line of Empire infantry, and it didn't quite work out here. That said, if your opponent does bring Empire swordsmen units like that, then you can definitely buckle the front line somewhat quickly here, and then push through and get into their back line pretty quick and annihilate that in short order. So I definitely think there were some slight mistakes made in the composition, especially with the Dark Riders with crossbow, which I think were unnecessary. And I definitely think there could have been, for example, a handful of Corsairs would probably served him a little better. And definitely perhaps definitely the Black Dragon, I think, was one of the biggest mistakes. Empire tends to bring nets, so even if you obviously bring a single lord and a flyer, if you're careful, is fine. But if you bring multiple units, multiple flyers, Empire does have a decent selection of counters, so I think that's a bit of a risky maneuver. Nonetheless, great game to my opponent here. Jalay definitely dragged this out into a Pyrrhic victory. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below for additional content. As usual, guys, if you have any comments or criticisms of your own, then be sure to post them down below, and I will respond as soon as I can. As usual, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.